So again, good morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for gathering in this room today. But I think it will be proper and correct to start this event with the minute of silence to pay the tribute. So please let us stand up. Glory to Ukraine and glory to heroes. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Alexander Shatkovsky. My name is Senior Expert in Public Procurement of the European Union Public Finance Management Program, EU for PFM. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. And not so many of those events that we've had recently. I do hope it's going to be interesting. I do hope it's going to be inspiring. Despite that it's just one day and with very intense agenda, despite that we have the hybrid model because we'll have online speakers as well with offline. So I would like to jump into some technical aspects, just small announcements. First, if we have a raid alert, if it's about drones, UAVs, we continue working. But if it's a more serious risk like missiles, then we have some space in the bomb shelter and we'll have some organized transfer there. I do hope that we will not have the necessity, despite that some negotiations are sort of these taking place, but I do hope everything is going to be fine today. So second thing, please do not make any posts on social media, please, before we finalize this event. This is about our safety. It defines our safety day. Okay, so I don't want to create any more delays, and I would love to start, and I'd like to pass the floor for welcoming and opening remarks. Now we'll have the Deputy Minister of Economy of Ukraine, Mr. Andrii Teliupa. Thank you so much. Good morning. I'm so pleased to see all of you today, and even in this early rainy morning, but still we've gathered here. So I guess this is one of the earliest starts of the conference I've been at within a year. But anyway, for me, this is definitely an honor to open this, and this is pretty symbolic that we've managed to gather here so early, because if we take the reform of public procurement, this was one of the earliest reforms that was planned after the Revolution of Dignity. That wasn't the agenda, post-revolutionary agenda. So this is pretty symbolic that this was such an early one. The successful one, because we definitely think that this is a success story. We'll remember that for 22 years I've been in procurement sector. Last 10 years I've been handling the reform as well, and we all remember what the system of procurement was before, like what we have now, before and after. I think that we've paved a huge way, immense way, at the stage of our system stabilizing when it comes to transparency, effectiveness, also digitization and automatization of processes. It's not. It's definitely transparent. It's really fast, but still a lot to do. And with our partners, EU partners, and we're on board. And when we've launched the early stage of that, and when we had the first law adopted on the public procurement specifically, back then I was in Verkhovna Rada hall when it was adopted. We were analyzing it back then, from the standpoint of compliance with EU directives. So we are on this way, and we've been there all the time. Thank you for support, first of all, the support that we get from the European Commission and from EU for PFM project, because this is definitely the expert support, the backing that helps us to move forward. something that helps us to make the system more effective. And in 2025, we've planned to tackle many challenges. So new edition of the law to be adopted with maximum harmonization to EU directive on our membership way, because we are moving towards it, EU membership. So we want to move as fast as we can, as fast as our European partners are ready to move. So just upon the occasion, I'd love to mention this instantly, that we really want the project experts to provide us comments and remarks to our draft law by the end of May, please, because by June 5th, we plan to send it for the final endorsement to European Commission. And we already managed to amend a lot of items there. So we really want to have a fast response and fast feedback to make sure that we can bring it to the second reading, the fully endorsed draft law. And we'll finally have this updated law that will ensure some effective results. So, and we also will work for the procurement community, because you remember 2022, the procurement director, when I was in, we were, counting these amendments to 1178 as a procurement person. You were thinking, like, how many amendments, like, who is making these? How many of these shall we have? And now, as a regulator, I understand that, yes, many, many things should be responded instantly. You have to put these amendments. You cannot forecast anything. Like, you cannot forecast everything. So we're trying to make it convenient. We're trying to make it convenient and comfortable for requesters and suppliers. So I'd like to pass the floor to Eriks, and I just want to say that truly we're open. We're open to make sure that we implement those changes very fast. Sometimes I think that we are moving faster than some of the EU member states. So that's why we have to synchronize and negotiate, harmonize these, the pace a little bit for the system to be super transparent and effective. Because if we remember, like, for example, the procurement before Prozoro, that stage, yeah, the winners mostly were selected. They depended not on the prices but other factors. Okay, so the decisions. And I don't want to. Well, I want to have an effective system. With the life cycle cost and all the criteria, pricing criteria, to give a chance to requesters to function. So I want to finalize this speech that I give now, that reform is done not with the laws, not with the electronic system, not with transparency, but people. And within these 10 years, the largest achievement that we've made, so the procurement system, the people, of course, department of the ministry that is handling many, many, many issues. So experts, public, anti-corruption institutions that give the opportunity to develop the system, international partners who help us to update the system. And we are so grateful for the support. So people push the reforms. And I'm really happy that on this hall today I can see people who were here like 10 years ago with us shoulder to shoulder. We're not giving up, and we're like breaking the mountain piece by piece. Thank you. Thank you so much, Andrii. And reflecting on the people, he didn't use that special place for the speaker. So we're going beyond the limits. We're just one big team. So this is a strong, like, body language message, nonverbal message. Okay, I'd like to have now our true Ukrainian friend, Yanis Izalsniks, so who is actually the team leader for socioeconomic policy, director for Ukraine, DG Nest. And we'll have a chance to listen to him at the first session.
Good morning, colleagues. Very good morning from Brussels. It's also very early here. Real pleasure to see you, the Deputy Minister Andrii, Teliupa colleagues, distinguished participants. It's a real pleasure to address you on behalf of DG NS, European Commission. I would like to thank Ministry of Economy and our flagship technical assistance program for public procurement, EU for PFM, for organizing this important event and this discussion. We are gathered today, I agree, to discuss how the public procurement sector has been evolving in relation to the EU integration of Ukraine, what have been the key achievements, and what should be the our priorities for the further reforms. I'm pleased to see among the participants representatives of the government, parliament, control institutions, and civil society, and of course a warm welcome to experts from the EU member states and accession countries whose experience in public procurement reform is going to be shared with Ukraine. I would like to extend our praise to Ukrainian representatives for doing this amazing work and continuing the implementation of reforms despite incredibly hard conditions. We really appreciate and understand. For this opening, I'd like to just mention 3 key points, and we'll definitely have a chance to discuss all day and much more. I mean, first of all, as you know, public procurement is part of cluster of fundamentals for the EU law. So this is the first cluster, a group of EU law that is to be screened and open for negotiations, and the last to be closed. This fact underlines how critical a properly functioning public procurement system is for the European and EU single market. Actually, also very symbolically, public procurement was the first topic that we started the entire screening process for Ukraine. For Ukrainian legislation. So it is really a lot of first things falling in place and this role of public procurement as we see it. Secondly, until Ukraine joined the European Union, you know, we have also association agreement and DCFTA, deep and comprehensive free trade area in place. And this agreement applies. And this agreement provides us for a kind of guidance. What should we do in the meantime until we have a day of accession? And this agreement also provides for a mutual opening of public procurement markets. EU public procurement for Ukrainian companies and the other way around, namely Ukrainian public procurement may become accessible for the EU companies. So far, Ukraine has completed the first 2 phases out of 5 of this DCFTA envisaged public procurement roadmap. So once all the phases are concluded, Ukrainian companies will have access to all types of public tenders in the EU, including concessions and covering the utilities sector. And this will offer new business opportunities and boost Ukrainian business development. And of course, this is going to be already a very clear sign and benefit of integration into EU single market ahead of the accession. And thirdly, for this opening, I'd like to, of course, highlight that for a country in war, an efficient public contracting is really critical. Together with EU member states, EU provides the largest financial support to Ukraine under the Ukraine facility. As you know, 33 billion euros out of 50 Ukraine facility are channeled to the national budget of Ukraine. So, and a large part of it is contracted through the national public procurement procedures. So it's therefore our common interest and goal to make sure that this money is properly used. So this implies, of course, having a robust control and anti-corruption mechanism, especially in sensitive areas such as defense procurement or areas in which globally are considered as a high-risk areas, such as, for example, construction. So I'm very excited and looking forward to our discussion today and wish everyone to find new ideas how we could rapidly ensure alignment of the Ukrainian public procurement framework with EU acquis and in this very crucial area. Thank you very much. Forward to discussion.
Дуже дякуємо, Янісу.
Thank you, Yanis. Thank you so much in Brussels. You still don't even have the working day started, but people already are there, like helping us. This is miraculous. Okay, now I'd like my colleague Eriks Mezalis, EU for PFM team leader, component 2 public procurement, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed participants, colleagues, friends, it's so nice to see you here. You know, the classic how the conferences are starting is by saying, I love you, let's say, and I like you that you are here in so big, number, but I'm really glad that you are. So I'm really glad to meet you today. A warm welcome also from our part, from the EU for PFM procurement component, from our team. And I think that this conference is a great occasion for us to have a look a little bit also back and to reflect on our work, which we have done all together, working shoulder by shoulder since at least the beginning of 2024. And you know how it is. You work, when we work on everyday mode, we are concentrated into details, you know, and sometimes there are lots of questions to solve. But when we look back at the big picture, I think we have done incredible amount of work since beginning of 2024, and we have also a great achievements along the way. And today we can definitely celebrate those achievements. I will name just a few what we have. We have two very important primary laws in the Parliament. We have public procurement law and we have the legislation amending the laws of concessions and public-private partnerships. We are considering already starting to work on the defense procurement. During this time, we have had together with you different capacity building events. We have had exchange visits. We have had different events on centralized purchasing. We have had regional events where we met and discussed the reforms with our public purchasers. We are in the middle of the work of promoting Ukrainian small and medium-sized enterprises in the European Union market and also European companies in the Ukrainian market, so integrating even further. We have had also very good work and cooperation with the procurement oversight bodies because, you know, without oversight, the system, you know, doesn't work. And we have had different very constructive exchanges about the EU practices, about the good Ukrainian practices. And so we have taken this also further. And finally, I already mentioned the professionalization. I think that our purchasers, you know, in every Ukrainian city and oblasts and place are the backbone of the public procurement system. In Ukraine, we have authorized persons, so the person takes the huge responsibility over public procurement. So we have to ensure that he or she is professional, well supported, you know, enthusiastic, and I think we have done a good work with this in this regard. However, you know, again, if you allow me use one more phrase, there is this saying that teamwork makes a dream work. So our work would not have been possible with our partners, and I would like here also in the name of me and our team to extend a huge thanks to our partner institutions, to the Ministry of Economy, to the Anti-Monopoly Committee of Ukraine, to the Accounting Chamber of Ukraine, to the State Audit Service of Ukraine. These colleagues have done incredible work, but also other stakeholders. We have had very good contact, very good communication with the ministries, other institutions, non-governmental organizations. Then, of course, as Mr. Teliupa also mentioned, we have had a very good support from the European Commission and the EU delegation to Ukraine. They have always been supporting, understanding, you know, and they have helped very much to bring our common work forward. Then, of course, I also have to say thanks to the Central Project Management Agency of Lithuania. It's so good to have Jovita here for their support, for you know, being very always very flexible, very enthusiastic, you know, bringing the things forward. And of course, our team members, you know, it has been a joy to work together with our colleagues and to continue working. And finally, as Yanis said also, I think, and this is where I want to get more, you know, on the serious mode, is that we have to say huge thanks and bow, you know, to the colleagues who have worked here from Kiev, from the partner institutions, from our team, from, you know, non-governmental sector. So for us, working outside, you know, outside Kiev, outside Ukraine, it's sometimes even hard to comprehend what it means to work, you know, in the wartime situation. And despite this, the reforms, you know, have been taken forward, and everybody has been very enthusiastic and responsive. So huge thanks and admiration to you for that. It's very important to always remember, you know. I think in this conference, I would like to kindly encourage you to network, to meet old friends, to also make new acquaintances. Please be encouraged to exchange contacts, to catch up on social networks, to let's say to establish new friendships. And I would like to wish every one of us, first of all, a very good conference and also a very successful way forward. Again, referring to what Mr. Teliupa said, bringing Ukraine to EU in the accelerated speed. So, дуже дякую. Thank you, dear colleagues, and very successful conference to all of us.
Так, нас поки зараз
For now, we are preparing for our first session, and I would like to draw your attention to the fact that you can get your headsets for simultaneous interpretation. So please get your headsets now to make sure you're comfortable. We are going to start our session 1 very soon. All the participants are here already, and we're going to invite them on this stage very soon. And Eriks for the moderation. Just a couple of minutes.
Esteemed colleagues, it is my pleasure indeed, as Sasha kindly noted, to announce the first session. And I would like to kindly invite here Mr. Teliupa, Mr. Movchan, Mr. Marchuk for our first session on the public procurement reforms. Our colleague Yanis will join us, as you saw, online. Yes, and indeed, dear friends, I wanted to say that public procurement reform are the main driver of the Ukraine's accession to the EU. It is concentrated, of course, not only on the legislation, which is also very important, but also on the capacity building, also on the professionalization, in order for Ukraine to continue its very good traditions of having one of the best and most modern public procurement systems. We surely intend to continue, with the reform in this way forward. And therefore, it is my huge pleasure again to give the floor to Mr. Teliupa to reflect on the public procurement reform. Mr. Teliupa, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay. Українською, да? Тобто ми окей.
So I'm going to speak in Ukrainian. It's a pity that I haven't used this stage. It has all the logos of our partners, but it was symbolic because the system of public procurement is an ecosystem that has a number of components to it, and how should I put it? I'm going to talk about the changes in the system in the past year and those that are planned for this year, which concerns the whole ecosystem, starting with the department, the legislation, the Prozoro and central procurement agencies, our platforms and our procurers. However, the Ministry of Economy assesses its achievements looking at practical results, because we are the Ministry of Practical Outcomes. And if we are to look at the past year, at the total number of concluded agreements, we have over 3 million of those. And then the total sum is 880 billion hryvnia. So 888, this is our number, and this is the volume of procurement, and which testifies to how important this reform is for the country and for the public reforms. And if we are to look at the distribution at the branches where the money is being spent through procurement, this is construction, energy, fuel, and repairs. And this also shows the priorities of our country. This is predominantly a reconstruction, renovation, and support to all governmental structures as they are now, which is very important. And this is why we are constantly improving on our internal legislation, specifically that concerns procurement, to make sure that we're working fast without losing any transparency and effectiveness. And when we're talking about the distribution of the types of procurements, so 70% of all the agreements concluded in the past year were based on competitive procurement. We see that competitive procurement remains, well, cheap, and they're small, and then there is no sense in conducting full-scale bids. There is no big competition there, and the streamlined tools are working really well. But almost all the large procurements are done in a competitive environment, and we remain consistent here to maximally limit the number of exceptions to make sure that procurers, even if we have fast-track procedures, are based on the fair competition. And this is why we must balance the speed and transparency and open access to new participants, because if we look at the number of participants in the past year, 188 legal persons that participated in Prozoro, and we see that the large amount of new companies joining public procurement, and we want to see the average number of them per such events growing. So, and we see that the competition is important because it must be effective in terms of price. And I would like to specifically remark on the e-catalog and Prozoro market. Here we should commend on the work of Prozoro and our central procurement agencies, specifically professional procurement and as administrators, because if we look at the growth, then in 2024, the number of concluded agreements based on the requests increased fivefold from 12 to 64 billions. And respectively, we see important advances here. We remember how difficult it was to launch the e-catalog, but now it is extremely popular. And I would like to note, if we're talking statistics, this is the popularity among the non-resident participants, because it's seeing how transparent and open our system is for foreign participants is very important. So with non-residents, we concluded agreements for over 22 billion hryvnias. This is the volume, and a lot of non-resident participants take part in the procurements and to conclude agreements successfully. If we look at the major fields of us as a regulator, we see the process of harmonization with the EU, and we never stop. We also work on the electronic system together with the Prozoro to increase the level of transparency of procurement processes. And another important aspect is the professionalization of procurement, which is a long-lasting process where we have to build the training system. This is the very process that gives us good results, and this is where we must work to make sure that the procurers and authorized persons understand how to better conduct procurement procedures. And it is especially obvious when we look at difficult tools such as price criteria and the cost of life cycle or environmental criteria. Therefore, our legislation now covers everything. It lists the tools, but it's as for the how widespread they are, it's a little bit difficult because of the complexity of the procedures and the attitude of the control bodies. Because when we conduct procurement based on the price, it's easier to check and to prove. And therefore, professionalization is our goal from the viewpoint of procurers and our clients. Everybody must understand how it should work, what benefits it gives, and this is what we're going to work on further. I would like to add also that we introduced certain important changes in the last year. First of all, we modernized our electronic procurement system to make it possible to conclude agreements as an e-document. We documented the qualification criteria in accordance with Article 2 and 17 of the law, a localization criteria, and automatic protocols for procurement. We integrated the system with Dream and Trumbita systems and other systems too. We also added the option to conduct procurement using the funds of foreign donors. We also have the electronic procedure of complaints and also have indicators for possible violations. So step by step, we are moving towards digitalization of all the stages of this process to make sure that it's as fast as possible and on the other hand, as transparent as it can possibly be. And this is why we think that the electronic tendering documentation will give us an opportunity to effectively analyze and to better analyze the process of procurement, to see whether there are instances of abuse and how to improve its effectiveness, because we have everything in place. When we have the digital system up and running, it's easier to make decisions and to improve on the system. And I would like to specifically focus on the professionalization. We conducted trainings, regional trainings, also trainings with the project, and also awareness raising campaign and the adaptation of the standard program to increase the capacities of our clients and work on the competences of our procurers, because from the viewpoint of our client, when you receive such weird packages of documents, it's difficult to make the right and effective decision in this case. That's why I want to also focus on another aspect. It seems that we've managed to build a good interaction with the Ministry of Economy and the auditing service and the Chamber of Accounts to make sure that the system of procurement is effective. And I would like to list our priorities for 2025. First of all, as I voiced it, is the maximum harmonization with the EU of our draft law 12/520. I am hoping for comments and for the European Commission's position soon, and so that we can move towards the adoption of this law. And I'm sure Oleksii will tell us about this more in detail. And we are constantly working on analyzing EU legislation, especially when it comes to the expected cost of the procurement. And we consistently work on implementing European norms and this is how we move towards the European Union accession. And to conclude, I would like to thank our partners, first of all, to EU for PFM project, because this is the very project that gives us an opportunity to have expert support to process these proposals and bids and to move towards implementation. And it's such a pleasure that we have an expert discussion going on about the implementation of TPS in Ukraine, how we should look at the price criteria, at the cost of life cycle. We're talking about the competitive environment for procurement. And it's such a pleasure that we're moving forward, we're making advances. We have big plans for 2025 to finally adopt the new law, and hopefully together we will manage to do it as fast and as effective as possible for our procurement system. And so the floor back to you.
Mentioned many very important things. Perhaps I could say that for me the key takeaways were at least four. One is that what I have also noticed personally, that even during the wartime, Ukraine's procurement system never lost the focus of competitiveness. Prozoro is used as much as possible. All the wonderful tools that have been implemented, even before the war, are in the full action. Then you also mentioned, connected with the first topic, the further advancing of the electronic solutions, also very important. Professionalization, and indeed there has been lots of work done in terms of the delivering those ideas and explanations of the reforms to the public purchasers across Ukraine. And also I have to say this, otherwise I might get fired from my work. Also about the European Union harmonization, which is the tool that brings all these things together. Thank you indeed for this very important list of working streams and the priorities. So, and now it is my pleasure now.
Yeah, just to add one priority, because my speech was focused on public procurement as procurement. But it's very important for us that we also very focused on development of public-private partnership, and also concessions, because just the committee just passed it to the parliament, and so we really hope that this draft law will be adopted, because we see these changes one of the base for further economic restoration of Ukraine. So I want just to highlight that this reform is also a top priority for the ministry. And so we really hope for further development and fast implementation of this law also. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Indeed, a very important point. And moreover, that we now have a chance also to hear from the esteemed members of Ukrainian Parliament about these two questions, about the procurement reform in terms of the legislation, about the reform in the area of PPPs and concessions. Indeed, our members of the parliament are the ones who give a final green light on these very important legislative acts and the reforms as a whole. So we are so grateful to have you here today. And it is my pleasure now to give a floor to Mr. Oleksii Movchan, member of the Parliament of Ukraine, and he is also the deputy chairman of the Economic Development Committee of the Verkhovna Rada, and he has been the one who has in many ways chaired all the work of the new draft public procurement law. So, Mr. Movchan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Eriks. Всім привіт. Дякую.
Thank you, Eriks. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here today to this discussion, so that we can talk about public procurement. And first of all, I would like to thank the European Union and EU for PFM project specifically for their work and assistance in reforming our area. And these things can only be done in consultations, and we really feel your support. And I would like to thank everyone who is also engaged in and has been engaged in public procurement reform for the last 10 years. And it's important to see this community growing stronger, because this community is our pillar. Some people come, some people go, but these pillars remain. And you know, this is already 50% of our success of our reform, but we can talk about it in the evening.
So in the Parliament, we work on this huge Program 11 520, the large draft that we're tackling now. We cooperate actively with the European Commission, Ministry of Economy on that, and trying to update it. So we took it in the second half of 2024. Everybody was running so fast. Like, why am I saying that? Because many of you were asking, like, what's with the draft? Like, when we finally adopt that? So I'm telling you, I'm giving you the insights. So we were running because it was a conditionality document, let's say, in the World Bank DPL. So this is the macro financial document that actually sets the conditions under which Ukraine shall get the credit. So one we should comply with. And in the World Bank, they usually have very strict conditions, like if you fail the deadline, goodbye, no money. So back then we were running very fast. Plus the draft law objectively was not very harmonized with European Commission opinion. So we had to redesign that. So this is like pretty different comparing what we have now. We had at the first reading, like it's totally different. But then we managed to negotiate that with the World Bank, you know, to get an opportunity to update it and to finalize it with the European Commission. So currently, like, we're in the process of smoothing that. EU for PFM are reading consultant and more of Ministry of Economy, let's be honest. And the department, specialized department and deputies are handling that. So they put the amendments. More, it's of course a question of internal governmental kitchen, as we call it. So it's not that they don't comment the global stuff. Well, they do, but we don't understand how to work with that. Some exceptions are there for specific central executive power bodies, you know, where government has to negotiate it inside in the system and to step out with a unified opinion, what to say to European Commission or European Union. So this process is delayed a little bit, but it's extended. But I do hope that we will have soon some final remarks, and we'll adapt these and we'll send those. We'll send the following edition. Maybe this will be a final edition, who knows? Like, we'll send it to European Commission. I would love us to finally adopt the law as fast as we can. But look, this is quite a it's forecasting something, setting some deadlines. This is not a grateful thing, okay? I'm a person who wants to tell you some solid statements, but this is not the case. Yeah, I can't tell you when we vote. So just with the timelines for you to understand that we're moving forward. By the end of the year, this is the realistic deadline, the realistic scenario for us to adopt. By the end of 2025, we still have 6.5 months. Therefore, when we tackle such a reform, you know, when we're in this reform, like public procurement, I personally, our committee has a huge track with complicated stuff and that, you know, economic stuff. And in 6 years, we've adopted so many laws. This is the second edition of the PP law. Also the PPP law, the second edition, and amendments are there. So we've we have the next convocation circle already there. So what's important, and I personally, with that kind of experience, I'm a follower, a fan of evolutionary changes, some incrementally done. You put the amendment to the law, and then in half a year, again, you do it again and again, and you're like, tightening the bolts. You're like fixing the bugs, basically, in this legislation, because there are no perfect laws on this planet. Plus, social relations always move faster than laws, evolve faster. So some processes are there in our life which are not reflected in the legislation, and this has to be tackled, and legislators must keep their fingers on the pulse. It's always harder to do when there's a huge gap between the adoption of changes like in the procurement. So this is the case eventually. In 2019, I guess, we adopted the current edition of the law, but of course now we have the full-scale war. Before that we had COVID, and a lot of things were regulated by the government. So it again saved the situation a little bit with procurement, but generally that stuff should be regular. It's a living body, a living, breathing body, a law, especially on procurement. From the standpoint of scale, maybe I'll make a mistake with figures, more or less plus minus 100 million, okay? I analyzed. During the war, approximately 60% of economy is allocated via the state sector. So it's clear, like military, meaning defense, state control, which is strengthened, and so on. And in our budget, approximately 3 billion. 1 billion, 3 trillion. Sorry, 1 trillion goes through the public procurement. So what is the price via the system? More or less. Tentative. What is the price of error? Of improper regulation? For example, when we put 3 words in a law, okay, and these 3 words give a chance to discriminate or to minimize competition or other processes, the price of an error is colossal, the value, and state pays with money. You can, for such stupid 3 words, sorry, you can pay like 50 million. What is 50 million? Half a budget of Kyiv City. Like, it's essential. It's super important. Or the budget of 4 regional councils. That's a huge amount of money. So this is money waste. But these errors, these mistakes are there. We have to correct these. I have to eliminate these bugs. With huge optimism, we look at this reform because who helps us? European regulators. European directives help us with that. And this is my fourth iteration in adapting the national legislation to EU directives. So this is my 4th dive. So you have to be creative and improvising. Quite often it's put very clearly. You don't have any loopholes there. But in many cases, it's adaptable. All right. So I do think, and I feel that adaptation of EU directives to our legislation, procurement legislation, will handle so many of our problems. It doesn't mean that we don't need to amend. Definitely, we will have some problems. We'll have some changes. We'll correct something. Maybe something will not be launched initially. But okay, we're learning. We live and learn as a society, as a parliament, and we're learning the process. We live with these trends, as everybody. We have in the law such categories of procurement, for example, which are not applied in EU that much, but it's unclear how that shall work in Ukraine. But we still put that under the law. Sometimes there are such phenomena, and you may like it or not, but this is how it has to be. So, European regulation as a concept will help us to handle many of the old pains and problems. And in this draft law, we raise the thresholds. I really like the story with... I really like this story. With this... with the CPA, yeah. This is a great stage for the procurement system, like evolution, because for quite a long time, and this is my personal opinion, for quite a long time, I've been in Prozoro, let's say, environment, and I can call myself a person from the inside, an insider, because I used to be in the same building where Prozoro people were sitting. So for quite a long time, this Prozoro system image and reputation, I mean the electronic procurement system and the very brand of Prozoro, you know, and how everybody supported that. So it's a powerful brand still. The whole system was using this brand as engine. You know, they were pushed by this old fuel purely by brand. But at some point, this fuel dispersed. It wasn't there. So, and still a lot of this vibe, but nothing substantial there. So CPA catalog, this is something that actually, as I think, this is something that gave a fresh breath to that, you know, but breathe some air, a new evolutional stage. So in this law, we give not opportunities, but obligations. We set obligations to apply the CPA concept, framework, procurement, and many flexible mechanisms, which are not limiting the procurement procedure. But if you read it very thoroughly, if you analyze that, a requester or requesters, if they read the law, they get opportunities to save money and to ensure competition, and also to ensure maximum transparency. By the way, transparency is a huge demand in Ukraine, demand for justice, basically, for equality. And this is something that we as legislators put as a core, as a goal, when we adopt the law in future. So quite often, well, we made Prozoro as open procurement system where people can check and say who stole money eventually, or who expropriated that. And people have to get a chance to check, like, okay, we need to have such a system which will eliminate even any chance to steal something. This is the perfect format. Apart from this anti-corruption component, we need also to ensure that there's justice, just approach, and no manipulations, that nothing is stolen, or to make any thefts super difficult, super expensive, or super difficult because of the consequences. Competition helps, you know, it's not a secret to us. People, the higher is the competition, the more intense the competition at the bidding, the fewer opportunities to manipulate, detour, whatever. So if in our committee we had these, I don't know, icons, like in the church we have one would be responsible for justice, the other about competition. So, and we would pray for these. I'm not a fan of the lowest price concept. Not always the cheapest is the best. And we need to transform this mentality, society. I mean, we need to forget about it a little bit. We have one discussion in this draft law process, the non-pricing criteria. It relates to that, the discussion. And many, including our NGOs, they say, no, pricing, non-pricing criteria, we cannot allow these to exist. Like, we cannot implement that because, like, they will steal. These are manipulations. On the other hand, the cheapest, buying just the cheapest items, that still manipulations are there, basically, in the procurement. We don't eliminate it. It doesn't work. So it's not about progress. So we have to dig deep. So I do hope that, and I think that we'll adopt this in the law, in the text of the law. We as society will take the non-pricing criteria, that these can be or may be, like in the foundation. We need to have these precautions already, you know, safeguarding stuff. We will, of course, put some suspension time in the law for everybody, or let's say the transitional period for everybody to prepare to implementation of the new reform. But we have to start really thinking now, like, how to ensure that we're safeguarding, we're protecting ourselves, because the price of any mistake is super high, especially now. People who have bad intentions regarding the public money, budget money, they're very talented usually. They will find the loopholes. They'll try to find these, you know. And talented people that are fighting the evil, they need to find ways to close these loopholes to avoid that. Yeah. We are still processing the draft law, of course. We have some We have some active work done. I do believe that by the end of 2025, it will be there with a signature and will reach maximum effectiveness in public procurement sector. For us, this is super important reform. It's an essential reform. I believe that it can stimulate economic development via competition and just approaches, equal approaches. And then in Ukraine, we'll be happier if we'll have more justice here. Thank you so much for your attention.
Very much, Mr. Movchan. First of all, for lifting a little bit the secret of of the work of the Parliament on the public procurement law. Also, yeah, it's I think everybody understands that in every country the reform of public procurement is one of the most complex because of so many stakeholders involved and the significance of the public procurement legislation. So yeah, thank you for also for, let's say, highlighting your considerations in this reform and your priorities. I think what you mentioned about, first of all, modern public procurement tools, such as centralized purchasing, such as also different electronic tools, and also non-price criteria, aligns very well with the EU priorities. So for sure, we are on the right track. And sure, let's continue to cooperate, in order to complete this very, very important task until the end of the year. So thank you so much. Now, under the EU accession negotiation chapter 5, we have, I might say, two sides of the coin. One is public procurement, and others are public-private partnerships and concessions. And here I have a pleasure, also an honor, to give floor to Mr. Igor Marchuk, member of the Parliament of Ukraine and the chairman of the Subcommittee on the State Business Interaction and Investments of the Economic Development Committee of the Verkhovna Rada. Mr. Marchuk has led the work on the new amendments to the legislation on the PPPs and concessions. These are very important for the attraction of the private investment. So we are very glad to have you here with us today. And please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Eriks. After my colleague Oleksii actually told all the secrets, all the couloir secrets of the parliamentary secrets. Now, I don't know how can I build my message now because everything is already on the table. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's super important event that we have today, and I will start with this. You didn't mention, Eriks, you did mention our modest, humble committee, economic committee, in the context of cooperation, but I just want to mention that starting from 2022, almost, we've been in regular cooperation with consultants and with you in particular, and I'm extremely grateful for attention that you've paid to our activities. Without any just limitations. I just want to say that you were the best of the consultants. And thanks to your contribution, thanks to your recommendations, we currently have this edition of the law that, yeah, we still, we didn't even manage to show it to people, as they say in Ukraine. Okay, but we will. So there are a couple of things I'd like to highlight now. First of all, Oleksii noted a very, very, very proper thing on evolution, legislative evolution. If we want to have a functioning law, not for the law to just, gather on the shelf and to line the shelf, but for this law to push the country forward, it's impossible to instantly structure the perfect law. You cannot just, give birth to a perfect law from the scratch. So in the context of PPP and procurement reforming and also concession. So what we can observe this evolution if we look at the history of development. In 2019, we adopted the updated legislation on concessions, then to enhance the institutional capacity, we established this agency, PPP agency. Then we had a couple of successful, as I think, pilot projects finalized. So the port concessions, Kherson-Olvia, we learned we learned to analyze our mistakes or something we really needed to update and improve under the new edition of the law and the law on PPP, I mean, and concession adopted in 2022. So we were trying to integrate this updated legislation, updated all our achievements since 2019 to that updated legislation, not just in theory, but in practice as well, make sure the two components are there. Everything we had back then. But it happened so that, again, in cooperation with the European partners, with our colleagues from Europe, we had some harsh debates, intense debates, quite prolonged debates, intensive, and consultations, many iterations of these. But there was one single goal, to search for consensus and to make sure that the two things are kept in the process, retained. First, keep the law functioning in Ukrainian reality. We're not the EU so far. We have just to recognize that. We're still not there. But second thing, to approximate as much as we can our draft law to European legislation. In particular, Directive 23 and 24, those that regulate the PPP issues and concession.
And it seems that we were successful at it. The draft law voted for in the committee for the second reading, and I hope that soon I won't give you any specific dates because, as we know, anything can happen. So it's better to vote for it and then announce it after the fact. What I want to focus on is also the following. Without engaging the private capital, we won't be able to rebuild our country. There are various estimates, but I think I won't be mistaken if I say that around $300 billion. This is the estimate of our needs, and we are grateful to our international partners for their support. And it's important because we allocate our money to our defense needs. And without the support of our European partners, it won't be impossible to exist under such conditions. That's why private capital has a key spot in this reform. And already within our committee, we structured two working tools concerning commercial projects. This is the legislation on industrial parks that is in the focus now, and my colleague Mezalis is taking care of it. And here we have the investment, which is my area of expertise, and we already engaged several billion hryvnias from our investors thanks to this tool. And what remains is the third investment component. I call it our investment trinity. So this will concern the not the commercial but public projects, the social infrastructure, and so on. What are the novelties? There are several things for me to say here. The legislation in general is published on the website of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine. I remind you the draft law 07508. We streamlined and simplified the conditions and deadlines according to which the projects may be implemented in this public field. We also implemented, and I'll be open and honest here, these are those projects, pre-threshold projects, 5.5 million euros. And I am also tasked with the issues of small and medium-sized enterprises in the committee, which will also provide the SMEs with the opportunity to participate in the rebuilding of the social infrastructure, which is very important. And I would like to ask Eriks, when we are talking about public procurement, I would like to remind you that in Ukraine, the penetration of import into is 38%, and in the EU countries is 5%. So we would like to ask you to help our small and medium-sized enterprises get access to public procurement in the EU. So pre-threshold projects, we hope that we will be able to revitalize our very important areas. This is the historical heritage area and the natural reserves area in Ukraine. I hope that it will provide us another impact for our work. And by the way, we also established the category of grant financing for the projects, and we decreased the risks for the investments, which allowed us to combine the grants with private funding. And we also reinforced the guarantees to private investors, especially in their opportunity to restitute the damages that the private investor sustains because of the improper the lack of quality in the activities of the public partner. And as for the deadlines, we almost cut it in half, so around 19 to 20 months, such as it is now, to 10 to 12 months, thanks to the simplification of the procedure and a range of other things, and I can talk about it for hours on end. I really, really love this law. I believe in it, and I hope very much that after our parliament has voted on it, we will have an opportunity to amend it, to improve it, because we have the commitment that we have before our European partners, which is to design as fast as possible the regulation for the field of utilities, which is also an important story in the world. There is a lot of experience when we see the dramatic improvement in the field thanks to the engagement of professionalism and competence of private partners.
Marchuk, for providing us with very valuable information on how the reform in the sector of the PPP and concessions is going on. You mentioned this very important thing of importance of attraction of the private investment. Indeed, I think we all could agree. And what is very positive thing is that, as you also you were speaking about the use of the PPP and concession mechanism in different sectors, starting from different industries and then even to the areas like preservation of the cultural heritage and so on. And indeed, as we see the new amendments in the legislation do not entail any restrictions on the sectors where the PPP should be used. And I think also that's a very healthy approach, because judging for the experience of other countries, as you introduce the restrictions, people start to feel, but why it should be restricted? Is it something bad? No, indeed, I think everybody can fully agree that this is the very healthy approach towards the public-private partnerships, and we very much hope that the law will be adopted, and as we know, there is already a pipeline of the projects to be realized, so that these projects could be successful and will serve to Ukrainian society as a evidence that PPP could be a very good, very healthy mechanism. So thank you again for chairing this and leading this very important reform, which has been also moving forward very rapidly. So thank you so much. And dear friends, for sure, as we know, I don't have to remind all those reforms, as our esteemed colleagues informed us. They are now going on in the context of the EU accession. There is always this dimension present. Whatever we do, we reform legislation on the procurement, on the PPPs, or we are introducing procurement tools, electronic procurement, modern purchasing solutions. There is always this European Union umbrella, which is very important to keep in mind. And that's why I'm very glad that we again have a great opportunity to give the floor to Mr. Jānis Aisalnieks. He is the team leader for Socio-Economic Policy Directorate for Ukraine at the DG NST, and he will speak about the public procurement reform in the light of the accession negotiations under the Chapter 5. So, Jānis, I hope you are connected well with us, and it's my pleasure to give a floor to you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Eriks. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you for this very frank, open, and detailed discussion. It's been a pleasure to listen to your argumentation. It's great to see you. It's great to have this discussion. It's really important. I think maybe I can summarize it with a kind of proverb that in this case, given all the circumstances, it's really very useful to measure 7 times before cutting. And there are many arguments for it, speaking for it. Certainly, modern public procurement framework, including PPPs and concessions, is really important. As it was mentioned, it is part of the EU legislation. Not only simply legislation, but part of fundamental legislation, which means that if we are not going to get it right, there is a risk of hindering the rest of the accession process, because this is one of the lessons learned from the previous enlargement. And this is the reason why a group of legislation was pulled together in a cluster of fundamental legislation, which is asked for candidate countries to be aligned first. The negotiations are opened first and are closed last, or never closed until the day of accession, to make sure that the legislation remains stable. Of course, the other argument would be why to get it right and not to go for any additional changes is the stability that is required for the investors. We talked that public procurement is very important also for FDI attraction, for international investors, who of course would like to enjoy and see the stability of the Ukrainian legislation, and that would especially concern the PPPs and concessions. I will come back maybe in a few moments in a greater detail to it, but of course, full alignment of the public procurement legislation, including PPPs and concessions, will have to happen by the day of accession. That is, of course, the ultimate deadline. However, we really hope that the accession of the Ukraine is in a foreseeable years. I mean, of course, everyone would have this date in mind for themselves, but I would personally think that it will probably happen in a few years, not like 10 years, in less than 10 years. And certainly this is not a long period for investors. Therefore, I would say that it is a wise thing to align once, adopt this, and put it on a table for investors, so that there would be this stability. As I mentioned, this bilateral screening process for Ukraine started with the Chapter 5 on public procurement in July last year, which was, of course, an honor, privilege, and also responsibility. And since then, we have covered a lot of ground. We have actually covered 22 chapters. So, of course, public procurement is also very closely linked with many other aspects. We have covered 22 chapters out of 33, which are altogether to be screened, and we only have 13 chapters left to be screened until October. So we are advancing very, very fast. As you know, these chapters are grouped in 6 groups or clusters, and this was the group of fundamentals, where is the public procurement, and we closed screening of that fundamentals group already in November, and we have sent our report to the Council. Council has European Council of EU member states. Council has looked at it, has asked many questions to the European Commission, and Council still has to decide for opening of negotiations in this particular cluster. In the meantime, we have also screened and completed reports for the cluster on internal market and on cluster on trade and external relations. These reports are also sent to the Council, and actually today, in few hours, there will be a debate in the European Council here in Brussels on the cluster 6 on trade, external relations, and on a cluster 2. So we are advancing very fast, which means that any moment there could be a decision on the Council to proceed with opening of the negotiations. And this opening will, of course, start with opening of fundamentals. And of course, as we can imagine, the first thing that will happen will most likely be that we will have to open in some point the chapter on public procurement. And then we will have to start very precise negotiations. What is going to be the timeline? What is going to be the speed of the full alignment with the EU legislation? This is something that is imminent, and this is something that is worth to be kept in mind. Of course, this process of screening allows us also to assess not only the legal alignment, but also administrative capacity and future plans for the alignment. And this is also very crucial to identify the key issues that need to be addressed in these negotiations, and pinpointing the areas where preparation and capacity building on the Ukrainian side is particularly necessary. I would like to also refer that for Ukraine, recovery and reconstruction, in addition to all the aspects that I mentioned already, will also clearly benefit from the solid EU compliant public procurement system. Of course, of particular importance it's going to be, as I said, for the attraction of the private investments and actively contributing to the infrastructure development and maintenance. This is going to be crucial to get in the right way the framework for public-private partnerships and concession frameworks. And for this is the reason why we would like to see the full alignment in these two areas as soon as possible. We didn't start from scratch. As I mentioned before, we have the association agreement and DCFTA framework in place since already years. And I know that the work on concessions and public-private partnerships and also on public procurement started already before the news of the EU accession. So therefore, there's also a little bit of heritage of the certain ambiguity and possibility of graduality of this alignment. But now, of course, we are in a different modality, and we need to head for a full alignment as soon as possible. As you know, we are also tracking the progress of alignment of the candidate countries in our annual enlargement report. This annual enlargement report is our assessment of the accession reforms in all candidate countries. And in last year in November, for public procurement reforms, EU assessed that Ukraine has achieved some level of preparation, which means that there is still a way to go. We considered it was rather limited progress back then in 2024-25, and we certainly hope for more this year. And we know why. Of course, we have seen a lot of preparatory work being done, and we have been involved in discussions many times, and we have looked at the draft legislation and contributed to it. Last year, we in fact recommended to proceed with this progress towards adopting EU acquis compliant laws in these two large areas and draw up a roadmap for enhancing public procurement control by the State Audit Service in line with Ukraine plan, and assess the relevance of current exceptions to public procurement legislation under martial law and take measures to reduce them to a minimum. Today, perhaps it's too early to draw the full conclusions. As we heard also from your interventions, it is slightly unclear when exactly these adoptions would happen, but they would happen, and as soon as they will happen, we'd be happy to. We will certainly go in assessing the final result, and that's going to be a kind of result of the work of several years. But certainly legislation needs to be adopted and assessed positively by the European Commission in terms of progress with alignment, and we hope that this is going to happen. I also would like to recall that we have agreed and included full alignment of the EU public procurement legislation within Ukraine plan as a reform benchmark to be achieved at latest by third quarter of 2027. And that would include the full alignment on the classical public procurement, PPPs, concessions, and defense procurement as well. And this is, of course, a massive undertaking, which in fact is a little bit of the ultimate deadline for the full alignment, because, of course, as a Ukraine plan measure, which has been agreed between the Commission and Ukraine and endorsed by the Council, is something that stands as a firm way forward in achieving the reforms. In few words about the controls and audit of the public procurement. So we believe that Ukraine also needs to enhance the effectiveness of its procurement control body by slightly better defining its organizational structure and responsibilities, and by providing more capacity building measures with awareness raising over violations, corruption, fraud, conflict of interest, and public procurement. This automatic indicators should be rapidly and frequently updated and utilized more actively by the State Audit Service in Ukraine in its monitoring practices. Last but not least, I would like to raise the point on the fight against corruption elements, which are addressed in every chapter of the accession negotiations. As we know, I mean, corruption poses a great threat to the integrity of the public procurement. It's compromising core principles, increasing costs, reducing performance. So there are many, many reasons why to tackle it. And of course, substantial funds involved in Ukraine's defense procurement as well as recovery and reconstruction, I mean, heighten these risks, and this needs to be properly addressed. And in order to mitigate these integrity risks, we think that Ukraine should also establish an effective transparency, integrity, and anti-corruption measures based on risk assessments across organizations, sectors, and regional level. We think that Ukraine could also ensure transparent reconstruction planning and projects prioritization policy. I mean, starting from the very beginning, when deciding on what's going to be done in terms of strategic planning, this is also very important. Of course, exceptions should be clearly and publicly articulated. With this, I would like to thank you for your attention and express hope that our workshop today will bring rapidly us closer to full alignment in the public procurement. And of course, we stand ready to provide further input and have another read through the proposed draft legislation. And we hope that this is going to bring us to a full alignment as soon as possible. Thanks a lot, Eriks. Back to you.
Thank you a lot, Yanis, for mentioning those important points. I would like to reflect a little bit on the few of them. So indeed, I think, the colleagues will later correct me with the questions, but I think objectively the process of the EU accession is complex, although very rewarding. So, in your intervention, you kindly spoke about the priorities, about the, let's say, points that are still need to be further addressed, and this is always very valuable because then indeed, as you noted, it helps to design our further work, and also to understand better on how this quite complex process goes, and also for our Ukrainian colleagues to better prepare for it. So it was very valuable. As you kindly noted, as for the time, assumptions of the time when Ukraine joins the EU, I'm very sure that each of us harbors hopes, and if we would, open the debate for this, this number of the years would decrease and decrease. So each of us would offer a shorter number of years. So let's hope, and also let's work on this direction in order for this wonderful moment to happen as fast as possible. I also agree that certainly we were not speaking of, two-digit number. We are speaking of one-digit number, and as low, in the pecking order as possible. So thank you, Yanis, for being here with us. And I know you are, with us also in our further work. So we can always, return back to you in case of, any need for further interactions and consultations. And now, dear colleagues, I know that somebody of us might thinking about some good coffee, but we have still a little bit of time. And as one of the organizers of the conference, we couldn't resist us an opportunity to steal a bit of spotlight and also say a few words from our part about the public procurement reform. So it's my great pleasure to invite Oleksandr back on the stage, and he will speak about public procurement legislation and implementation. Oleksandr, to you.
I'm here, thank you. Ще раз всім доброго дня.
Okay, everyone, hello. So hello again. So what I'd like to start with, this is the first within the last 8 years, basically the first and only conference that we've had about public procurement in Ukraine. So again, under the EU auspices and with certain amount of technical assistance. And the last cycle of these conferences, we've had these in 2015, 2017, I guess, when we prepared the new edition on procurement law, when we adopted this, when we launched the preserve system, so this is like a proof that we are about to step into big changes now, okay? We're on the horizon. Many things changed, of course, and we we are living in a war, in a full-scale war in this turbulent time, but we've become a country, we've gained the membership, we've gained the candidacy status for EU membership. In 2017, when the last conference took place, European integration was still not perceived seriously as a concept. The majority of Ukrainians and maybe the majority of European colleagues back then thought that this was like a super, super distant horizon line. But, well, currently the defining factor that has certain... It's the factor that impacts everything, including procurement. So many things changed, but what didn't change, definitely, we have a lot of work in front of us. It will never decrease, I guess, in the nearest future. So what I was modeling and imagining, that this whole activity is about regular, the three-body task solution, basically. We are in a highly dynamic... You've seen this series. Yeah, maybe someone read that book. I even checked where this concept came from. Three-body challenge or task when three bodies, and these impact each other, and it's hard to calculate the further movement. Sun, moon, and Earth. But for Ukrainians, it's close because our national symbol contains three, the trident. So I think we'll find the solution for the task. The three tasks that we have. First, EU membership and European integration, of course. And in this context, we have a nice manual or guideline, let's call it like that, and a supportive document, the screening report, which is finalized based on results of the very first screening that we had in July, the first EU-Ukrainian in our joint history. So a very detailed report contains a lot of recommendations. And among these, we have recommendations like, for example, at a first glance, these may be recommendations are not tied to harmonization of PP and PP equities, but these are there in the screening report. These are already under our obligations. It is mentioned. Eriks mentioned even maybe changing the new edition of the defense procurement law. Let's say improvement of communication with procurers, with market operators, with people, with public, on amendments to amendments. Let's say this is like directly in the screening report. It's there. What we've mentioned a couple of times, the non-pricing criteria, that these are not that monstrous as it seems to be now to us, and changing the mentality, like from the lowest price, from the cheapest to a couple of criteria. Well, it's not shift of mentality, basically, because in our everyday life, we not always take price, the lowest price, as the core, you know? So trying to use common sense in public procurement is a great thing. Okay, apart from the screening report, I guess many of us know and participate, especially people from ministry. We are now preparing a national program which ensures the negotiation within all 33 chapters. Ministry of Justice is coordinating. And the screening report will be the basis for all the measures under that. Second part, or second body in the task, martial law procurement and recovery procurement. So I think that many surveys will have here, and even books and theses will be written on how the procurements were regulated within these 3 years, what challenges we had, how dynamically everything changed, it's still changing, because truly we had to respond to challenges, but we managed, within these 3 years, we've managed even when we had the direct procurement when it was allowed. So still bidding dominated in this turbulent full-scale war environment in the center of Europe. This is a fact, you know, this is actually what happened. Alongside that, what we had and still have reforms, you know, which directly impact the sector. Reforming the public procurement management system, BEAM, DREAM, you know, and other friends of public finance. DREAM, I mean the platform. Everybody knows about, actually. So, by the way, today we have a unique conference. We will not have anything about DREAM, like no presentations. Victor will not be offended. With that, in this part, by the way, I would love to mention a very important paper which describes the situation and has good recommendations. A report of the temporary Verkhovna Rada investigative commission on public procurement during the martial law period that was endorsed in October 2024. And it's a truly interesting paper. It's like many facts are there. So nice recommendations are given in it. And everybody who gave recommendations, all the stakeholders are actually work with the report. So it's a pretty balanced document. Third body in a task, it's typical for all procurement systems in all developed countries, is that it's not a European integration. It's not response to war. Ordinary everyday things, routine things to push the procurement forward. Professionalization, updating the electronic procurement system, and of course, here we have a key document, the strategy for PP development. And currently, we already have an urgent need to design operational plan for 2026. And we already have a need to start thinking about the strategy for the next period, all right? What Yanis called the EU membership acquiring period, 2027, 2030 plus, let's say. And another important document that was mentioned in the report, in the screening report, and we'll hear of it today, State Anti-Corruption Program. The current one is almost finalized. The new ambitious one is about to be born, and I do hope that we'll have more attention there for PP, for public procurement, compared to previous one. But this is still something that we talk about, proper agenda of properly functioning procurement system. Thank you. That's all from me. Bye now.
Thank you, Sasha, for mentioning those important points. Actually, I had also an intention to speak, but you and especially Mr. Teliupa, Mr. Movchan, and Mr. Marchuk already spoke about those main, very important drivers and things of the reforms. So I will not add to that. Instead, I think we have a good opportunity, again, a short moment before a coffee, to give a floor to our audience. Maybe there are some questions that you would like to raise and to address to us. So if you have, please, there's now an opportunity. Our colleagues will give you a microphone, and then please kindly speak in the microphone. Just raise your hand and we will give you the mic. Okay, so just then, surely the questions will follow, but just then one question from my part to our panelists. And sorry again for holding you off for a coffee. So I will say very honestly, when we are working and we are working together with you and discussing the things, one thing that is in our minds is speed, rapidity, because I think we have to say very honestly, we cannot treat our existing situation as a kind of the usual situation what we have. We need, for Ukraine, we need to do everything with very high speed. It contains public procurement laws, procedures, implementation. It also contains public-private partnerships, also different reforms such as centralized procurement, such as support to our companies and others. So maybe I would just like to kindly ask you to comment on that. Would you also see that, one of the priorities of our reform should be to ensure that all the procurement transactions, PPP transactions, happens actually as fast as possible? And perhaps maybe you would see also some electronic solutions in this context that could help. Maybe you could, if any of you could kindly comment on this. Yes, please, Mr. Marchuk.
Okay, look, we are interested, we're truly interested, immensely interested in accelerating, because we have a problem tied to recovery of the lost infrastructure, social infrastructure primarily. Of course, this can be done purely and only when we have proper legislation for that, backing legislation. By the way, in the new edition, we've also stipulated this accelerated model, high-speed model, for the projects related to economic recovery and infrastructure recovery. This model will give us the ultimate speed because this procedure is super simplified. There's no need to have these feasibility studies purely on the basis of conceptual note. And this dramatically decreases the deadlines. Secondly, what is in that edition? So electronic trade system, as we call it, that also when we launch the system, it will accelerate. It will minimize the deadlines and simplify the procedure. So speed in this context is, of course, an ultimate goal. And we have a draft law, and we will do completely everything that we can for this law to be brought to Verkhovna Rada Hall as fast as it can be brought.
Much, Mr. Marchuk. Maybe I would give the floor to Mr. Movchan, if you don't mind, and then also to Mr. Teliupa.
Дякую дуже.
Thank you so much. So when we have economic reforms launched, quite often we address this concept. It's not measurable, but the principle is clear. So the transaction speed. So this is the base. The faster the transaction is, the faster the economy is moving. So if you put something in the law that can slow it down, you're slowing down the economy, respectively. So this is the first essential principle. We need this for the processes to be super fast. It's not just a procurement procedure itself, but any appeals, contesting, using tools, using these safeguarding tools and measures. Second basic rule. For the transactions to happen fast, you need to have a clear mechanism. Therefore, like electronic system should be at place, but it has to be put very clearly with clear formulations, not to misinterpret it. When it's clear, when there are no misinterpretations, it works. So Prozoro and CPL mentioned that again. It has great regulatory framework, and it has there's a very reliable electronic mechanism in the foundation. So that's where we should move.
Thank you, Mr. Movchan, for mentioning those particular examples. Mr. Teliupa, please, kindly, the floor is yours.
So I would like to add here, just as I said, Ministry of Economy is about figures. It's about practical results, tangible results, and evidence-based policy making. That's what we are. So when we talk about procedural deadlines and periods, this is critical for procurements which are like construction, designing, large scale, comprehensive, ones where we definitely multi-stage, where there are huge deadlines for analysis of the bidding documents, preparing proposals, appealing, and so on. In many cases, when we speak about procurement, where we have the standardized items or services procured, well, the extended procurement period negatively affects the competition, by the way. Ukraine has a very dynamic market. If you need to get a proposal submitted and wait for a couple of months before the decision, well, business thinks of additional risks. They avoid these tenders, or they want to cover the currency fluctuations, inflation with extra prices. So for these standardized procurements, it has to be super fast, and it has to be like the appeal procedures has to be very fast as well. And we can see this demand from the market. If we take the practice in real procurement cases, it doesn't affect the access of business and residents. So yeah, we need to find this optimal balance between speed and give enough of time for these complicated multi-stage ones.
Thank you very much, Mr. Teliupa. I think this is the very nice takeaway on the balance, concentrating on the speed and achieving the balance, between the interests of contracting authorities and the taxpayers as a whole, and also economic operators. And I think, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, we can continue our discussion on the coffee break. I like to thank very much the panelists for finding a time in her very busy agendas to be here with us today. And let's continue discussion on the coffee break, and let's kindly return here at 12 minutes past 11. So let's continue over the coffee. Thank you so much.